The rain on Tau Ceti Prime was not water, but a fine, persistent mist of liquid methane that fell in slow, silent sheets, painting the world in shades of cold blue and gray. Kalen, a human xenogeologist, paid it no mind. His environmental suit kept the minus 180 degrees Celsius chill at bay as he meticulously chipped a sample from a spiraling silica formation. He was alone, as humans often were on the edges of the galactic commons. They were considered odd, too emotional, too fragile, too loud. But they were also stubbornly good at surviving in places no one else wanted to be. A flicker of movement, too quick and too quiet to be any of the other researchers from the outpost, caught his peripheral vision. He turned, his helmet light cutting through the gloom. Nothing but the jagged, crystalline landscape. He wrote it off as fatigue and resumed his work. He felt it before he saw it again, a presence. This time, when he spun, his light landed squarely on a figure huddled in the lee of a towering ammonia ice spire. It was an alien, small and slender, with skin the color of tarnished silver and large, luminous eyes that reflected his beam in a kaleidoscope of fear. The shape suggested feminine characteristics common to many bipedal species, was shivering violently, wrapped in tattered gray fabrics that offered no protection against the methane rain. She had no suit, no breather. She should have been dead. Hey, Kalen's voice was soft over the suit comm, automatically translating into basic common speak. Are you all right? The alien flinched, pressing further into the ice. Her eyes darted past him, scanning the horizon in pure terror. That was when Kalen saw the marks on her arms, angry, cauterized welts that spoke of energy weapon fire. A low, resonant hum vibrated through the ground. In the distance, the sleek, predatory shape of a guild slaver skiff broke through the cloud layer, its searchlights beginning to sweep the valleys. The guild was a blight, operating in the legal gray zones, trafficking in lives. The commons bureaucracy often looked the other way. The alien girl's eyes met his, and in them was a silent, desperate plea. Every protocol, every commons regulation, screamed at Kalen to contact the authorities to not get involved. But the fear in her eyes was a language older than any protocol. It was a human language. The skiff's lights swept closer. Come on, Kalen said, his decision made in an instant. He moved toward her, not with a threatening speed, but with a deliberate calm. He unsealed a small emergency compartment on his thigh, pulling out a compact foil blanket. He draped it around her shoulders, then, before she could react, he gently lifted her. She was shockingly light. He activated his suit's maximum insulation protocol, sharing its meager residual heat, and began to move, not toward the open plain where his rover was parked, but into a maze of jagged basaltic columns he'd surveyed the day before. He navigated the labyrinth with quiet urgency, the hum of the skiff a constant, oppressive drone above. He found the crevice he remembered, a narrow split in the rock that led to a small, dry cavern. He slipped inside, setting the girl down on the dusty floor. They waited in the dark, the only light from his helmet and the faint glow of her eyes. The skiff passed overhead, its searchlight bleaching the entrance of their hide for a terrifying second, then moved on. In the silence that followed, broken only by the girl's ragged, rattling breaths, she was breathing the thin native atmosphere, another impossible detail. Kalen finally asked, "What's your name?" Her voice, when it came, was like wind chimes made of glass, translated by his suit system. "Lyra, I'm Kalen. You're safe for now." He offered a nutrient bar from his kit. She stared at it, then at him before taking it with delicate three-fingered hands. She ate with a desperation that spoke of long hunger. "They took my clan," she whispered, her luminous eyes fixed on the cavern floor. "From the forests of my homeworld. The guild, they said we were aesthetic laborers. My family fought. I ran. I have been running through the stars for, I do not know how long. I stowed away on a freighter that dumped waste here. The cold, it does not bother me like it does others. My people are adaptable." Kalen nodded. "We need to get you to the outpost." We can contact the Commons. No. The word was a sharp, frightened chime. The guild has listeners everywhere. Bureaucrats can be bought. If they find me, they will take me back, and they will make an example. Please. The weight of her trust settled on him. Bringing an undocumented, hunted alien into a Commons outpost was a career-ending, possibly imprisonable offense. But sending her back out into the methane drizzle was a death sentence, or worse. The rover ride back to the outpost was tense. Kalen hid Lyra under a tarp in the back, amidst his equipment. He bypassed the main gate, using a service entrance coded to his biometrics that led directly to his personal quarters, a small, utilitarian pod on the outpost's less monitored lower deck. Getting her inside unseen was a heart-pounding exercise in timing and luck. His room was a capsule of human warmth in the sterile outpost. A few pictures of Earth's forests, a real book on paper, a knitted blanket from his sister. Lyra stood in the middle of it, dripping methane, looking at the images of vast, green, sun-drenched landscapes with an expression of aching wonder. "You need to stay hidden here," Kalen said, activating a privacy lock on the door. "I'll get some supplies. We'll figure this out." As he turned to leave for the commissary, a question finally surfaced, one he'd been too preoccupied to ask. "Lyra, how are you breathing the air here?" And the cold, she looked at her silver hands, then back at him, her large eyes unreadable. "I told you, my people are adaptable. It is a slow change, a borrowing." She said it as if it were the most natural thing in the universe, and, too exhausted to elaborate, she simply sat on the edge of his bunk, the foil blanket pulled tightly around her. Kalen left, his mind a whirlwind. He was harboring a fugitive. He had broken a dozen regulations, and he had no plan. But as he walked the sterile corridors, the memory of the searchlight sweeping over their hiding place solidified his resolve. Sometimes rules were the wrong thing to follow. Sometimes you just had to be human. For 3 solar cycles, Lyra existed as a ghost in the machinery of Outpost Theta. Kalen's quarters became her world. He smuggled extra food from the mess, claiming a recent increase in appetite due to extended field work. He recycled his water allotment with extreme care to account for her use. The only thing he couldn't explain was the energy signature, a faint, fluctuating bioread he noticed on his personal scanner whenever Lyra was deep in what she called her reveries. She spent hours staring at his pictures, especially one of a dense, old-growth forest on Earth. "The light is trapped in the green," she would chime softly, her voice full of longing. "On my world, the light sings in the crystal leaves." It is a similar song. Kalen learned fragments of her story. Her people were the Sylvani, a species once widespread, now dwindling, known for a deep, almost spiritual connection to ecological systems. They were also known for a peculiar genetic trait the guild found particularly valuable: passive bioadaptation. A Sylvani could, over a period of weeks, subtly alter their physiology to better survive a new environment, tolerating different atmospheres, temperatures, even radiation levels. It was not instantaneous shape-shifting, but a slow, miraculous evolution on demand. To the guild, they were the perfect, self-sustaining slaves for hostile worlds. "We do not just adapt," Lyra confessed one day, her fingers tracing the weave of his knitted blanket. "We harmonize. We take a little of the world into us, and, in return, we leave a little of our harmony in it. It is a balance. What the guild does, it breaks the balance. It turns a song into a scream." Kalen's routine was a tightrope walk. His colleague, Rin, a burly Martian geologist, clapped him on the shoulder in the mess hall. "You've been quiet, Kale. And you're eating like you're fueling a freighter. Everything all right? Just focus on the deep silicate analysis," Kalen lied, forcing a smile. "Trying to prove my theory about the planetary formation." Ren nodded, but his eyes held a flicker of curiosity. The outpost was small. Unexplained changes were noticed. The tension snapped on the 4th day. Kalen returned from a survey to find the privacy lock on his door blinking red. Tamper alert. His heart froze. He entered slowly, every muscle taut. Lyra was there, unharmed, but She stood rigid in the center of the room. Before her floated a holographic security alert, broadcasting from the outpost's main server. It displayed a grainy still from a service corridor camera. It showed Kalen, from the previous night, carrying a disguised bundle that was unmistakably a person-sized shape. Intruder alert, the text scrolled. Unidentified biological signature detected in Sector 7. All personnel report for scan. I am sorry, Lyra chimed, her voice trembling. I was trying to access the Commons network to see if the pursuit had moved on. I touched the system, and it felt me. Her touch on the system. Not a console command, but a psychic biological interface. Her adaptability wasn't just physical. It's okay, Kalen said, his mind racing. We have to go. Now. He shoved extra ration packs and a portable water reclaimer into his field bag. He tossed Lyra a patched-up old environment suit he'd scavenged from Lost and found. Put this on. It'll hide your biosignature a little. As she struggled into the oversized suit, the door chime sounded. Then a fist hammered on the polymer. Kalen? It's Ren. Open up. Security wants to talk to everyone in this sector. 1 minute. Kalen called, his voice strained. He looked at Lyra, her large eyes wide with fear. He pointed to the maintenance hatch in the ceiling, an old duct leading to the external heat exchangers. It was a dangerous, cramped route, but it was the only one. As the pounding grew more insistent, Lyra scrambled up, vanishing into the dark duct. Kalen took a breath, smoothed his shirt, and opened the door just as the security team, 2 stern-looking Borland officers, arrived with Ren. Kalen Voss, the lead Borland droned. You are required to submit to a bioscan and a search of your quarters. An anomalous signature was detected. Of course, Kalen said, stepping aside, praying the duct cover was secure. The search was thorough. Scanners passed over every surface. They found nothing. The bioscanner beeped as it passed over Kalen himself, then over his bunk. It registered a faint, fading residue, a complex, unfamiliar DNA sequence mixed with chlorophyll and silica compounds. The Borlands looked puzzled. Contamination from fieldwork, Kalen said quickly, holding up his hands, which were still lightly dusted with Tau Ceti Prime's exotic minerals. You know how pervasive the dust is. Ren, standing in the doorway, wasn't looking at the scanners. He was looking at the floor near the bunk. A single, tiny, perfect droplet of condensation, not of methane but of water. Water that had condensed from the air in the presence of a unique, harmonizing biology. He met Kalen's eyes, and, in that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. Ren gave an almost imperceptible nod, and subtly scuffed his boot over the droplet. The Borlands, dissatisfied but with no clear evidence, left with a warning. When they were gone, Ren lingered. That was some impressive dust, Kale, he said quietly, his gaze fixed on him. The kind that follows you home and needs your help. He didn't wait for a reply. My shift in the main hangar bay starts in an hour. Bay 3. The supply shuttle for the Deep Array telescope leaves then. Its course takes it near the edge of Commons jurisdiction. Just a thought. He turned and walked away. Kalen's breath left him in a rush. He waited a tense minute, then whistled softly toward the ceiling duct. Lyra dropped down, silent as a shadow. We have a chance, Kalen whispered. But we have to move. The underbelly of Outpost Theta was a symphony of groaning metal, rushing coolant, and the deep, constant thrum of the fusion core. Clad in the oversized suit, Lyra moved behind Kalen with an eerie, fluid grace, her fear momentarily buried under a focused survival instinct. Kalen led them through service tunnels rarely patrolled, his heart hammering against his ribs. Ren's tip was a lifeline, but it was also a potential trap. Yet what other choice did they have? They reached a grimy viewport overlooking Hangar Bay 3. Below, the supply shuttle Windrunner sat on its landing pad, a blocky utilitarian craft being loaded with crates by automated lifters. A single human pilot performed the final pre-flight check. Ren was there, as promised, signing a manifest for a stack of crates near the shuttle's rear ramp. He glanced up, his eyes scanning the gantries. He didn't wave, but he gave a slow, deliberate blink, a Martian all-clear signal. "That's our ride," Kalen murmured. "We need to get into one of those cargo pods." As they prepared to move, a new sound cut through the industrial din, the sharp, authoritative whine of a guild skiff descending on a priority vector. It was a different model from the one on Tau Ceti Prime, sleeker, armed. It settled on an adjacent pad with a predatory grace. The hatch opened, and 3 figures emerged. They were Vex, a species known for their ruthlessness and common employment by the guild. Their chitinous plates were polished to a menacing sheen, and they carried neural whips on their belts. A Borland security officer hurried to meet them. Kalen activated his suit's audio enhancer, catching fragments of the conversation over the hangar noise. Tracking a specific resonance signature, passive bioadaptive property of the guild. Commons cooperation expected. The Borland officer nodded, gesturing vaguely. The lead Vex held up a small, pulsing device. A bioresonance tracker, tuned to Lyra's unique harmonic signature. Time evaporated. "Now, Lyra, now." Kalen hissed. They scrambled down a maintenance ladder, emerging behind a row of massive engine components. The route to the Windrunner's loading area was a 30-meter dash across open deck plating. There was no cover. Ren saw them. He deliberately knocked over a stack of empty cargo canisters with a loud, crashing clatter. The noise drew the gaze of the Vex, the Borland, and the shuttle pilot. In a moment of distraction, Ren gestured violently toward the open rear ramp of the Windrunner. They ran. Lyra's borrowed suit clanked awkwardly, but she kept pace. Kalen's boots pounded on the metal deck. A shout rose behind them. One of the Vex had seen them, pointing a clawed hand. The bio tracker in its grip flashed brightly. "Stop! That is guild property," the Vex translated voice boomed across the hangar. Kalen didn't look back. They reached the ramp as the shuttle pilot, a woman with a scar across her cheek, stared in shock. "What in the 7 hells?" "Sanctuary protocol," Kalen yelled, a rarely used human emergency code denoting the protection of sentient life from immediate harm. The pilot's eyes widened. She looked from Kalen's desperate face to the approaching Vex, then to the small, silver figure stumbling behind him. "Get in," she barked, slamming her hand on the ramp control. The hydraulics whined as the ramp began to rise. Kalen shoved Lyra into the dim cargo hold and turned just as the lead Vex reached the foot of the still-closing ramp. It lunged, its neural whip crackling to life. Kalen grabbed a nearby cargo strap, a heavy-duty polymer tether, and swung it like a club. It wasn't a weapon, but it was heavy. The blow connected with the Vex arm, deflecting the whip strike that sent agonizing sparks across the ramp door. The Vex recoiled with a screech of rage. The ramp sealed with a final, solid thunk, locking out the sound of shouts and the sudden, alarming spang of small arms fire hitting the hull. The Borlands, now siding with the guild. The shuttle lurched. Acceleration shoved Kalen to the floor. Through a small viewport in the hold, he saw the hangar bay doors rushing toward them, still closing on a security override. The pilot's voice, gritty with strain, came over the internal comm. "Hang on. This is going to be breach." The Windrunner's engine screamed. The shuttle shot through the narrowing gap, the screech of tearing metal echoing through the hull as they grazed the door edges. Then they were free, plunging into the cold, star-dusted void of space. In the sudden, weightless quiet of microgravity, Kalen floated over to Lyra, who was curled against a crate, shaking. "We're out," he breathed. But the calm was short-lived. Alarms blared. The pilot's voice returned tight. "We've got company. 2 guild skiffs, weapons hot, and they've convinced the outpost to launch an interceptor. They're jamming my comms to Commons traffic control. We're officially fugitives." The shuttle shuddered as a warning shot of plasma streaked past the viewport. They were in a slow, underarmed supply ship, being hunted by predators. Lyra uncurled herself. The fear in her luminous eyes had been replaced by a strange, deep calm. She looked at her silver hands, then at the shuttle's bare, metallic walls. "Kalen," she chimed, her voice clear. "Your ship. It is cold. It is silent. It's a machine," Kaelin said, confused. "Everything has a song," she replied. She placed her palms flat against the hull. "Even this." She closed her eyes. A subtle warmth seemed to emanate from her, and Kaelin's scanner, still on his belt, went wild. The bio-read wasn't just fluctuating, it was spiking, merging with the ship's own energy signatures. Outside, the lead guild skiff powered up its primary plasma cannon, a weapon that could easily slice the Windrunner in half. The targeting laser painted a deadly red dot on their viewport. "Evasive maneuvers aren't enough," the pilot yelled. Lyra began to hum. It was a sound not just heard, but felt in the bones, a vibration that resonated through the deck plates, the consoles, the very air. The ship's lights flickered, then glowed with a softer, golden hue. The engine's whine, a moment ago straining, smoothed into a deep, powerful, almost musical thrum. On the sensor display, the Windrunner's energy signature changed. It didn't just look like a ship on the scanners. It began to harmonize with the background radiation of space itself, becoming fainter, blending. The Vex gunner fired. The plasma bolt, a spear of destructive energy, screamed toward them and passed through the space where the Windrunner appeared to be, striking an asteroid fragment beyond. The ship hadn't moved. It had shifted, just slightly out of phase with reality. In the cargo hold, Kaelin watched, breathless, as silvery, vine-like patterns, faint and glowing, traced their way up the metal walls from where Lyra touched them. She wasn't just adapting to the ship. She was harmonizing with it. The shuttle, a dumb machine, was becoming an extension of her will to survive, to live, to be free. The guild skiffs fired again, a barrage this time. The Windrunner, guided by an instinct that was part pilot, part Sylvani song, slid through the onslaught with impossible grace, not just dodging, but seeming to anticipate the very intent of the attack. It was no longer a fleeing crate. It was a living, breathing entity dancing between the raindrops of death. The pilot's laugh crackled over the calm, a sound of pure, bewildered exhilaration. "I don't know what your friend is doing, human, but tell her to keep singing. We've got a jump point in range." Plotting a random course. As the jump drive spun up, bathing the hold in a blue light, Lyra opened her eyes. They were no longer just luminous. They blazed with the light of a captured star. "I borrowed the song of the void." She chimed softly, a single drop of liquid light, like a tear or sweat, tracing a path down her silver cheek. And the void answered. The Windrunner shot toward the swirling vortex of the jump point, the guild ships falling behind, their weapons firing uselessly at a phantom. Then, with a flash that left afterimages on the retinas of everyone who witnessed it, the ship vanished. Not just into faster-than-light travel, but into a legend. The jump was not the smooth, disorienting slide through subspace that Kaelin was used to. It was a crescendo. For a moment, he felt he wasn't in a ship, but was the ship a sensation of vast, singing metal, of stellar winds as tangible as rivers, of the deep, thrumming hum of the universe's background radiation. Then, it was over, and they were floating in the profound silence of an uncharted star system, a single yellow sun bathing the viewports in gentle light. The Windrunner's cargo hold was different. Where before there had been bare, grimy metal, now fine, hairline cracks in the plating glowed with a soft, internal bioluminescence, pulsing in a slow, steady rhythm that mirrored Lyra's breathing as she lay exhausted on the deck. The air smelled different too, not of recycled filters and ozone, but of ozone and petrichor, the sin of Earth after rain. The pilot, whose name was Captain Alara Vance, stumbled back from the cockpit, her face pale under the scar. She looked at Lyra with a mix of awe and primal fear. What are you?" Lyra sat up slowly, the glowing patterns on the walls dimming as she broke contact. "I am sorry. I did not mean to harmonize so deeply. The fear was great. The song of the weapon was loud. I asked the ship to sing with me, so we would not be heard." She looked at her hands. "I have never harmonized with something that was not alive before." Kalen helped her up. You saved us. We are not safe, Lyra chimed softly, her large eyes turning to the main sensor display. They will have traced the jump vector. The guild does not relinquish its property. And now, the Commons will list you as a criminal for aiding me. Captain Vance snorted, running a hand through her short-cropped hair. Kid, after that little light show, criminal is the least of our worries. We're a damn phenomenon. She studied her console. The jump was wild. My NAV computer can't even pinpoint where we are. And the ship engine efficiency is up 300%. Life support is running on a fraction of the power. It's like she's happy. They were adrift, but not helpless. They had a ship that was now, in some mysterious way, alive and thriving. They had time to think. Over the next few days, a plan formed, not from a single mind, but from the synergy of the three. Vance, a former Commons Patrol officer who'd left over issues of corruption, knew the underbelly of the galaxy. She proposed they head for the unharmonized zone, a region of space where neither the Commons nor the Guild held sway, a haven for those who didn't fit. Kalen, with his geological skills, suggested they find a planetoid rich in certain minerals Vance could use to fabricate new transponder codes and home markings. And Lyra? She began to teach. Not with words, but with being. She would sit with Kalen, place her hand over his, and he would feel a calming warmth, a sense of connection that eased the constant, gnawing fear. She showed Vance how to interface with the ship's new song, not through buttons but through intention. A thought to increase power to the engines would see a responsive pulse of light through the glowing veins in the bulkhead. The Windrunner was no longer just a vessel. It was a partner. Kalen discovered something else. The small, hardy succulent he kept in his quarters, a piece of earth, had, since Lyra's harmonizing, bloomed with furious, unexpected color. And when he spent time near Lyra, his own senses felt sharper, his thoughts clearer. Her harmonization wasn't just survival. It was a gentle, passive enrichment of life around her. Their idol was shattered when the long-range sensors pinged. Two ships had exited a micro-jump at the edge of the system. Not Guild skiffs this time. A Commons frigate and a Guild corvette flying in tandem. An unholy alliance of bureaucracy and greed. A broad-spectrum transmission flooded their comms. Fugitive vessel Windrunner and human criminal Kalen Voss. You harbor Guild property. The Sylvani designated Lyra 7. Surrender the asset and yourselves immediately or be obliterated. They were faster now, but not faster than warships. They were clever, but not armed. Despair threatened to sink in. Lyra stood before the main viewport, watching the approaching ships. Her reflection in the transparisteel showed not a frightened girl, but a being of ancient, quiet power. They do not understand, she chimed, her voice carrying a new, resonant depth. They see a thing to own. They do not see the song. She turned to Kalen and Vance. I must show them, but I cannot do it from in here. The song must be unfiltered. It's vacuum out there. Vance protested. Lyra smiled, a small, sad movement. For a little while, that will not matter. My people, when we harmonize deeply with the world, we can walk its surface without suits. This ship is my world now, and its song is strong. Before they could stop her, she moved to the airlock. Kalen followed, his heart in his throat. She cycled the inner door, stepped inside, and gave him one last look, a look of profound gratitude and unshakable purpose. The outer door opened. Lyra did not float away. She stepped out onto the hull of the Windrunner, her bare feet making contact with the glowing, vein-like patterns. The cold and the void should have killed her instantly. Instead, the patterns blazed with incandescent light, wrapping around her in a cocoon of shimmering energy. She stood, arms slightly outstretched, a silver figure against the infinite black, bathed in a halo of her own making. Then she began to sing. It was a sound transmitted not through speakers, but directly into the minds of every sentient being on the two approaching ships and aboard the Windrunner. It was the song of the old forests of her home, of crystalline leaves capturing starlight. It was the desperate, pounding rhythm of a heart on the run. It was the fierce, protective warmth of humans offered shelter. It was the roaring, joyous power of a ship's engines learning to sing. And underneath it all, woven through every note, was a simple, undeniable truth: the right to be free. On the Common's frigate's bridge, the tactical officer, a hardened veteran, felt tears welling up, memories of a childhood pet, of a first love, of a moment of simple, unasked-for kindness flooding his mind. On the Guild corvette, a vexed slaver dropped its neural whip, its aggressive posture softening into one of confusion and a long-buried, painful empathy. Lyra was not attacking. She was not defending. She was revealing. She was harmonizing not with a ship, but with the very essence of those who pursued her, touching the latent humanity, the buried compassion, the forgotten songs within their own souls. The weapon systems on both ships powered down. The targeting locks disengaged. A new transmission came, not from the military channel, but on an open, civilian frequency. It was the voice of the Common's frigate captain, choked with emotion. We were not told. The asset, the person, Guild liaison, is in custody. Stand down. I repeat, all units stand down. The Guild corvette hung in space, silent, its purpose broken by a wave of shared feeling it had no defense against. Lyra's song faded. The light around her dimmed. She slumped, the energy sustaining her in the void finally spent. Kalen, suited up, was already there, pulling her back into the airlock, holding her frail, cold form. She looked up at him, her luminous eyes dim, but peaceful. They heard, she whispered. The story did not end with a battle. It ended with a transmission. Sensor logs, communications records, and Lyra's song, a psychic imprint captured by the Windrunner's uniquely altered systems, were broadcast on every frequency, routed through anonymous relays, flooding the Galactic Commons network. The scandal was immediate and seismic. A guild slave, not a passive asset, but a being of immense, beautiful power. A human who broke the rules to do the right thing. Commons officers moved against corrupt elements within their own ranks. Public outrage forced a reevaluation of Sylvani rights. Kalen, Vance, and Lyra did not return to the Commons. They vanished into the unharmonized zone, their ship, the Windrunner, now a living legend, the Song of Terra. And wherever they went, stories followed. Stories of Silver Girl who could make engines sing and hearts remember. Stories of a human who listened not to laws, but to his conscience. Stories that left everyone who heard them breathless, not with spectacle, but with a rekindled hope, a reminder that in a cold, vast universe, the most powerful force wasn't weaponry or law, but the simple, harmonizing power of kindness, courage, and a song shared in the dark.